Welcome back to Past, Present, and Politics. I would like to start off this episode by just giving a brief history of the Bolshevik Revolution. I don't know about you, but this is something that I was not taught about in school, and I think it's one of the most important events for us to know about. Um, and it kind of, I don't know, once you start learning about it, it makes you realize how true the saying, the winners write history is. But the history of the Bolshevik Revolution or the Russian Revolution begins with Vladimir Lenin. And it's suspected that he was radicalized when his brother was hanged for the attempted assassination of the then current Russian Tsar Alexander III. And from this point on, he spent the rest of his life basically trying to create this socialist paradise that his brother tried to create. And so Lenin with Leon Trotsky um, were responsible for the Bolshevik Revolution. And on October 25th, 1917, the Bolsheviks took control of the Russian government. And something to note is that Bolshevik means the majority, which is very ironic because in November, after the Bolsheviks took over and Lenin was pressured to have an election, the Bolsheviks only won 24% of the vote. So they are definitely not the majority. But this did not stop Lenin, and in 1918, he took over the building where Parliament voted against the Bolsheviks, and they established control, which caused a civil war to break out. And but Lenin thrived off of the civil war because he used it as an excuse to massacre whole villages and declare a war on land-owning farmers. Um, so every year from 1917 to 1922, at least 28,000 people were executed and even more were massacred, um, or publicly executed and even more were massacred. And it is estimated that during Lenin's rule, at least 1.3 million people were killed. And this is the most modest number I could find. Some estimate several million. But when Lenin died in 1924, eventually Joseph Stalin took over. And Joseph Stalin was just as bad, if not worse, than Lenin. He probably was worse than Lenin. And from just in 1 year, from 1932 to 1933, he caused the death of at least 5 million people. These 5 million people starved to death under his rule. And from 1936 to 1938, during the Great Purge, Joseph Stalin had millions of people executed, even 70% of his own party committee. And this is because Joseph Stalin viewed everyone, almost everyone, as an enemy to the state. And he especially, this is the important part, he especially viewed Christians as an enemy to the state and people of faith. And so both Lenin and Stalin, they would put people who they viewed as a threat to the state, um, they would put them in these gulags or these concentration camps. And uh, it wasn't just Russians that they would put here, it was also people from France and Poland and Czechoslovakia and even the United States. Um, and they started this whole campaign against religion because they viewed it as a serious threat to their idea of a socialist paradise. And so in these camps, there was starvation, executions, and forced labor, all of these things. And um, they would typically hold like 100,000 people to 5 million at once. And in total, it's estimated that the gulags, at least 15 to 18 million people died in them. The lowest estimate I could find was 14 million, and the highest was like around 20 to 30 million, which is even the lowest estimate, 14 million, is a crazy number. And the thing that bothers me the most is that we are not taught about this in school, at least I wasn't. And Um, if I was, it was very briefly. And it's not because it's irrelevant, but in 1941 to 1945, we were allies with the Soviet Union. The United States was allies with the Soviet Union. And so we were helping them while this was going on, while Christians were being persecuted in the Soviet Union, and while millions of people were being killed, we were helping them. And this was all going on while we were helping them. And because of the support of FDR and Winston Churchill, um, the war, the World War II, made Joseph Stalin significantly more powerful. And just to give you an idea, um, according to the United States Embassy, the U.S. Embassy, we gave $11.3 billion to the Soviet Union during the war. And so that would translate, just to give you an idea, that would translate to like $180 billion today. So we gave them a ridiculous amount of money and we made them more powerful. So the reason why I think knowing about the Bolshevik Revolution is so important is because it just shows that we're not always the good guys and the winners write history. Like I was taught that in World War II we were the good guys and the Nazis were the bad guys because we were the good guys because we were trying to stop the Nazis. But did we really care about stopping the Nazis because we wanted because we were upset about 6 million Jews that were being killed in the Holocaust? Because if that was true, then why were we allies with the Soviet Union when they were killing even more Christians? It doesn't make any sense. And so and this is not something we're taught because if we were taught about the Bolshevik Revolution, then people might realize that, oh, maybe the United States were not always the good guys. And the thing that frustrates me is sometimes people think it's not patriotic to point out that we're not always the good guys. But the thing is, like, we as conservatives don't trust the government, which is a good thing. And so if the government is willing to do all of these super shady things, then why would it be surprising for the government to get us involved in wars that have nothing to do with us or to get us involved in wars where we are not the good guy? It's not shocking. And so I think it's important for us to learn about history outside of school because there's so many things that we're not taught for a reason because they do not want you to know real history. They want you to know what they taught you, which is a very, very small portion of history. All right, so earlier this month, this BBC article came out. It's titled California Man Invites BBC to Witness His Death as MPs Debate Assisted Dying. So, unfortunately, this is something that could have been seen from a mile away. Because Canada made this legal a while back, assisted suicide or euthanasia. And it's not shocking that we've come to this as a society because we live in a society of death, or a culture of death, because we as a society accepted that it's okay to drop bombs on children and it's okay to murder unborn children because they are seen as an inconvenience. So the fact that we have resorted to also assisted suicide when it comes to elderly people is not shocking. But in 2021, Canada made it legal for assisted suicide, not just for people, elderly people on death row, but also people who are diagnosed with psychological disorders, which you can probably see where this is going and how much of a problem this is, especially in our society when we overdiagnose everything. I mean, everything is a psychological disorder. And so it's ironic that we go to all of this work to help people or to try to help people who need mental help. Um, we go to all of this work to get people the mental help they need so they don't commit suicide, just so we can then turn around and make it legal for doctors to assist with suicide. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, what is the difference between you going to a hospital and and getting assisted, uh, having assisted suicide? What is the difference between that and just regular suicide? I don't see a difference at all. And so it's a very slippery slope because if you're we start off just going from assisted suicide for elderly people on death row who might be suffering to then going with psychological disorders, which could be anything like anxiety and depression, which almost everyone has. I mean, so many people have anxiety and so many people have depression, or at least think they do. And so I think once we realize as a society that individuals have worth and their lives are worth living, I think we will be way better off. And that's why I'm against things like war and abortion and euthanasia, because I'm simply anti death, which should not be controversial, but it is 2025, the year 2025. Anyways, thank you for watching this episode of Past, Present, in Politics.